Hello, friends, and welcome to a very special Houston edition of the Happy Half Hour.
This looks like Houston right here, doesn't it?
That's right. We're coming to
tell.
you from an undisclosed location. Actually, it's an adjunct training room.
Yeah.
That's a cold tub right in front of us that I may jump into later,
I will give you $5 if you do the rest of this podcast from that cold tub.
Which is perfect because we're right across from a bin that says Dirty Whirlpool Shorts. That's right. This is the glamorous life of the NFL, folks, and we're bringing you all the latest from Houston right here. Actually, the cold tub ain't a bad idea because it was about, based on my meteorological expertise, 1,000,000 degrees this morning.
It's somewhere around there. And this is going to be so cliche. It's not the heat, it's the humidity. The heat itself wasn't horrible. It was in the mid-80s, had a breeze. The humidity was stifling.
Yeah, that's a 78 dew point, by the way. We topped
I think it was like 83
morning.
humidity, 78 dew point. Yeah. At one point, I think I told you I was walking on the sidelines. One of the guys kind of looked over and stopped me. He goes, "I can't breathe in this." And it was like a wet blanket right there on top of you.
It was a little thick out there today, no doubt about that. But Dave Canales signed up for that. He wanted to see it. He's talked a lot all offseason about play Jacksonville in week 1 on the road. Got to be ready for that. And, today's practice was kind of interesting because he admitted, they started well, they closed well, but he said there was a period in the middle where a lot of penalties, and he said our guys got tired. Our guys got hot. Our guys got tired. They started making mistakes. And pushing through that kind of stuff is the reason we're here, other than the fact that Houston's a delightful place right here by the Dirty Whirlpool Shorts bin. And we're enjoying our time here. But Dave wanted it hot. He wanted to see them react because if there's a theme to this training camp for Dave Canales, it's learning how to be resilient and push through this kind of stuff.
And he talks all the time about finish. How are we going to finish? The offense, on the offensive side, because they were split, Panthers offense versus Texans defense, vice versa on the other field. The offense, I think, came through in that 2-minute drill and scored right there at the end. And, you saw that pop up in several games on the second half of last year. And, they took 4 games to overtime. 3 of them were a win. 1 of them was a fumble away from a win. And there were games where they fought back into the fourth quarter, even on some of the losses, like the Chiefs and the Eagles. So can you then make that one extra play to finish? That's what he wants to learn. That's what he wants them to learn here, and this was a good lesson in it. There is Christmas music playing in the background. I think we've entered some other dimension in this little room.
There's an iceberg under there. It's like we're at the North Pole and hell at the same time. We're actually in Hades on our way down.
The other side of the world from Pirates of the Caribbean.
But you mentioned the 2-minute drill. I mean, Bryce was doing Bryce things down the stretch, and really both offenses, first offense, second offense, both got to the end zone in that move the ball 2-minute work at the end of practice. And I was over there on that field. Bryce, if you haven't seen it on Panthers.com, check it out. Bryson Tremaine with the play of the day. He went yard. Jalen Coker wasn't practicing today. He was back here sick, getting some antibiotics. He wasn't feeling well, so he took the morning off to get himself right. Hopefully he plays. But Bryson Tremaine's out there running around with the ones, made a big play 40 yards downfield. And it just underscores another one of those themes of this camp, which is
another wide receiver.
A wide receiver making big plays. It's a lot of depth at that spot. And Tremaine's an interesting cat to me because after Dan Chisena left, he was a guy not a lot of people talked about, but he might have had a roster spot here because he's so good at special teams. Tremaine's got a huge frame. He's like 6'4", 210, 215, somewhere in that range. So he's got the range to go get it and runs pretty well. He catches the ball. He was injured during OTAs and was kind of hanging around, and a lot of people looked at him and thought he was like Tetaroa's brother or something hanging around, because he does look a little bit like T-Mac, but he stood out in camp because he is a big physical guy. And, to the point, Bryce has always been good in those 2-minute situations. And I thought it was interesting, and we've got all this stuff for you at Panthers.com. C.J. Stroud, his old friend, they played Pee Wee football against each other, AAU basketball against each other. C.J. said today, he said, Bryce is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. And you kind of forget, based on the way their careers started. I mean, CJ obviously came into a better position. He was Offensive Rookie of the Year on a 10-win team that went to the playoffs. And Bryce didn't enjoy a lot of those same benefits in his first year in Carolina. But the way he bounced back last year, people still think of him that way.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people back home to remember, because they are so hyper-focused on everything that's happened to Bryce, that globally, the opinions of him are still pretty good.
And we've seen this offseason in particular, some of the things that made him so special. Because, like you said, CJ said that today. We've heard Tetaroa say that before, too, because they
Right.
played each other in high school. And one of the things that made Bryce so special was his anticipation. And we saw that with the T-Mac throw during the Browns game on that one drive. And then there was a clip, you were watching the offense today, but there was a clip I saw floating around Twitter where he hit Leggett down the right sideline. And when the ball left Bryce's hands, XL is still way back here getting caught up by a defender, but he got loose from him and caught it in a spot that only Bryce and XL knew he was going to be. And so just textbook anticipation.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of other stuff happening on that other practice field that you were spending a lot of your time at. Trevin Wallace wasn't here for the start of practice. He had some personal stuff. He flew down this morning, joined the team, came out midway through practice. They weren't deep at that position to begin with. After Josie Jewell was released at the beginning of camp, Claude Cherilus is hurt. So basically they were like Christian Roseboom and a cast of thousands out there this morning.
Who can play linebacker.
Yeah, Bam Martin Scott was out there a little bit. Thomas Incoom, who's a special teams guy, who
John Radigan.
lines up outside a lot, and John Radigan. Everybody was kind of taking turns in there just to kind of get through. And that's just kind of where they're at until Trevin. The anticipation is he's going to be out there Saturday. I started to say Saturday night, but that's a noon kickoff here locally, which is a good thing. We'll get home earlier. But anyway, they expect Trevin to be back Saturday for the game, but it gave a different look. Despite that, the defense had a pretty good day. I mean, they were flying around over there on the other side of the field, picking off CJ a number of times.
Yeah, and of course, it goes back and forth, back and forth. This is still a CJ Stroud-led offense that's been pretty good the past couple of years. But there was a lot of give and take. The run defense, now again, granted, we're comparing this to what it has been last year, but it's a noticeable shift forward. And there were a lot of guys getting their nose in there. You saw a lot of times the safeties kind of throwing themselves in there. Lathan Ransom at one point just completely threw himself into the box to stop a run play, and he did so. And one of the guys standing next to me was like there goes freaking Ransom or something like that. And we saw Merrick do the same thing. Nick Scott a couple of times. At one point, C.J. Stroud kind of got out of the pocket and starts running around, and you think he's about to do like one of those things he does. And here comes Derek Brown chasing him down, gets him all the way out of bounds. And DB was joking about it later, like, man, I had to like run a long way to get to him. But he got him out of bounds on what was considered a sack. And that's not the only time he got sacked today. Pat Jones kind of stayed in the backfield on his reps. And it's hard completely to judge a sack in these practices when the quarterback is in a non-contact jersey. And I asked Pat, like, how do you judge a sack? What do you consider a sack for yourself? And he's like, basically, if I'm back there and I get a hand on him, I'm considering that a sack. He got back there at least twice. He thinks he got back there maybe even more than that. But we saw him at least twice. There's still, this is, like I said, this is still C.J. Stroud. This is still Nick Chubb running the ball. And he did get loose a couple of times to pick up, 5-6 yards at a time. Never really broke off a big one. But they kind of kept it bottled up much more than I would have anticipated. And then, like you said, picked him off a couple of times. Chris Barnes picked off Davis Mills during one drill, just kind of acted like he threw it right to him. And then Mike Jack picked off C.J. Stroud in the end zone. Again, it was a perfect read by Mike. It wasn't even in the right place, right time. He went and put himself in the right place to pick it off.
Right.
And then Nick Scott picked it off as well, batted a ball up and came down with it.
Yeah, you know how coaches will always say when they're stalling for time at a press conference immediately after practice, well, until we get to see the film, we won't really know how this all went. I feel secure in saying this joint practice went a little bit better for the Carolina Panthers than last week's against Cleveland Browns. I mean, not that there was anything necessarily bad. I mean, it was just a really active day for a lot of guys, and you did see plays being made downfield. You did see that defense run around making a bunch of plays. I mean, Mike Jack is a guy who broke up a lot of passes last year because he was opposite J.C. Horn and got targeted a lot more. And even on a day like today when J.C. wasn't out there practicing, and he's probably not going to play Saturday because of that left thumb, but Mike is still so active and playing really well. He's comfortable here in a way he hadn't been in the past and has really looked good. I mean, you're starting to see, obviously they've got a good bit of progress still to make and probably – it's hard to tell if this is a finished product in terms of personnel and defense, but you can see those guys beginning to improve. We've talked a lot about how much deeper they are on the defensive line. They made a point to go out and get Bobby Brown, Tershawn Wharton in free agency. They've done a lot through the draft to add to the pass rush with Nick Scorton, Princely coming in. But Pat Jones, DJ Wanham, you see strides being made on defense. And that's why I think this Texans practice was so good, because you moved up a level in competition.
Right.
No offense to our friends with the Cleveland Browns, but this is a 10-win playoff team the last 2 years. And that's why this was such a good practice for these guys, because they moved up a level in competition and they played better in response to it.
And, in a weird way, I think it almost ended in such a way that it can be positive moving forward, because it ended with a 2-minute drill. I think there was like minute 20 on the clock. Offense had to go somewhere around 75 yards, had to score a touchdown because of what the score was. And C.J. Stroud did exactly what he does, and he just moved right down the field, kind of picked him apart. But, both Pat Jones, Trayvon Merrick said afterwards, that's kind of the thing you can move forward from.
Right.
There's a lot to take, because there was a lot that went right, but coaches will always tell you can teach a little bit more, too, from when stuff goes wrong. And there's stuff from that 2-minute drill that they can learn off of from as well. But overall, a really, really good day for the defense. To your point, too, about Mike Jack, because he had his hand in a few pass breakups as well. He had one that got called DPI that might have been a little bit of home cooking here. I don't know if you can consider it home cooking at a practice. Can you get a home call
We're
at a practice?
Still in Texas.
Yeah. Had one that he argued was not DPI, and looking at the 8K wall, I think he might have had a good argument, but it did get called. But he also had a couple other pass breakups as well. I think last year that corner unit was kind of seen as like JC and the gang, like JC and whoever else was there. And obviously Mike was the starter for most of the year. And now it almost feels like JC and Mike, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple other news and notes out of this joint practice. There was a dignitary on hand. That's right. Our very own Dom Capers was an entertaining guest as he walked in. It was like the Godfather had walked into practice. And in a lot of ways he is, because Dom Capers, as you old heads like me remember, was the inaugural coach of the Carolina Panthers, the inaugural coach of the Houston Texans. He kind of laughed about being crazy enough to sign up to coach 2 expansion teams, but he did a good job with it. The job he did in Carolina was the reason the Houston Texans hired him to get started here in 2002. And, Dom's just one of those legendary figures. I enjoy seeing him on the field because it reminds me of what it's like for somebody who loves his job so much.
Yeah.
We talked earlier in the summer. Dom came back. Dom was injured. He popped a hamstring off the bone during OTAs, had surgery, was off his feet for 2 weeks, which is a nightmare if you're Dom Capers. He wants to be out there on the elliptical working out every day after practice. He wants to be on the practice field. And it wasn't until the first day of training camp back home in Charlotte when he was able to get back out there. So seeing Dom out there on the field greeting people like a dignitary was cool to see.
Yeah. When we were walking around at one point, he was like, "This is weird." He was like, "This," because I guess it's the first time he's really been back. But he's like, I remember when we put all this in, pointing around at all the practice facility. He's like, "This is weird being back out here."
Yeah.
But when you're Dom Capers, everywhere you go has a memory when you're that embedded in the NFL.
That's right. He likes walking down the halls in the stadium and be like, "I remember when that was something else. So-and-so used to sit here," just on down the line.
He celebrated a birthday this week, too.
That's right. Dom turned 75. And so may we all age as gracefully as Dom Capers did. So a couple other nuggets. Nick Scorton had to be taken from the field today, taken in a cooling trailer, get some IVs. They're trying to take care of Nick, get him squared away. He's from here, and he kind of fell victim to the heat a little bit during practice. That shows you, just how hot it was out here today.
So sometimes you can get too hot too fast, and It's hard to get your core temperature back down,
Yep.
which is kind of what Canales essentially said happened, that they were just having a little bit of trouble getting his core temperature back down. Wanted to be careful there.
Yep, and so hopefully Nick bounces back. They're talking about, trying to maybe get him back in the game. We'll see what the next couple days bring. And, after a practice like that, you never know when stuff pops up and when somebody has, something after the fact that they didn't realize at the time. So we'll see.
Which will factor into the decision on how much they play Saturday.
That's
He
right.
said that today, too.
That's right. Canales is going to wait and see. He's talking about playing them a little bit more maybe than they did the other week against Cleveland, maybe a third series for each of the first each of the first groups. So we'll see how that goes. But there's a lot to come. Keep it locked on Panthers.com for all the latest. Stay tuned to the Panthers YouTube channel for all the latest video. And by the way, if you haven't enjoyed Luke Kuechly on Cart Talk with J.J. Jansen, a nice, tight 50 minutes of Luke Kuechly. You know how I say, the answer to any problem is more Luke Kuechly? We got more Luke Kuechly on the Panthers YouTube channel. By the way, I'm a little salty with Kuechly, and I had to text him about this today because the previous record for Cart Talk appearances was 35 minutes, held by me in a blizzard. So I told Kuechly, let me see you bring it in the snow, big boy. You're riding around in the AC with JJ there. I was out there braving the elements. So anyway, check that out on the YouTube channel. Keep it locked on Panthers.com. We'll have all the latest from Houston for the next couple days in that game on Saturday. Until then, we'll see you next time on the Happy Half Hour right here. And hand me a pair of them dirty Whirlpool
don't.
No, hand me a pair of clean Whirlpool shorts. I'm getting in this tub.
Oh, my God.
We'll see y'all back at the house.